Hello, this is the Silver Watchman here to join you on episode 8 of Random Heroes. Now, this is the final game of Random Heroes, so there's not all that many videos left. This has been truly a wonderful series. It brought back some nostalgia. The good kind, not the memories that suck. Wow. That's a lot of sucky memories, but there's also a lot of good ones too. Now, this is the Random Heroes this is my favorite Random Heroes game. For one reason, and one reason only. You get to play as a Templar Knight. Free with shield and everything. No, I mean like a legitimate shield. Like, the blocking. The most underrated ability in any game. If there's blocking allowed in a game, nobody really thinks about it. They're like, well, you should be able to block. Nobody knows why that is. I could look it up, but I'm kind of lazy right now. I don't want to look it up. But that's real cool. You get to block your enemy's attacks with a shield. But there's more to that. There's more than one type of blocking. You have spiritual blocking. Spiritual blocking is the act of using one's beliefs to stop an invading belief from coming in. This is most notably done with a man or woman of God. It is done with other religions, but not to the same success. Because ultimately, every single other religion other than Judaism and Christianity is constantly changing what it says. And when I say that, I mean, and I understand there's a lot of different Christians out there, quote unquote, Christians, denominations, whatever. A lot of them are wrong. And here's why. I'm a man of God. I don't consider myself a Christian. I consider myself a man who walks with God. And that is how you should be. A man or woman that walks with God. Now, I like how it's called a walk with God. And the original Christians, if I remember correctly, they called themselves the Way. We believe in the Way. Which, if you really think about it, my gosh, that is just so cool. They're like, we believe in the Way. What is the Way? Jesus. What? Yes, Jesus is the Way. Well, if he's the Way, what is truth? It is also Jesus. Well, how do we become alive then? Through Jesus. Oh man, I'm having a hard time containing my excitement. I have to remain very... the excitement is just like bubbling out. It's just like, you know how you have a cup and then that cup, like, if you're boiling water in a cup and the water just goes like over the edges of the cup. Don't do this with plastic or glass. Do this with like metal and stuff like that, and you'll be like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. Because God walks with you. Like, you don't even have to be like a lot of people have this like misconception that a lot of Christians have created, unfortunately. That you need to be like this super good person to come to God, and you kind of don't. You could be the most vile person on the planet because God says, come as you are. Which, if you think about it, that's just awesome. That is just, oh, that's so many levels of like, oh, that's cool. Just so many less, like, oh, it's so cool. And I know I'm just like, this has been a couple minutes of just me gushing. It's always good to come back to doing things of God. Will you go a little bit away from the path every now and then? Yes. Yeah, now every man of God or woman of God has that moment where they slip a little bit away from God and what God wants. And that is, but the point of the matter is not that you're slipping away, but that you come back, or that you come to God even in the first place. Well, I understand that the behaviors of some Christians have made it hard for some people that aren't of God to come to God. But here's the thing. Don't let their behaviors stop you from coming to God. They aren't all that Christians really are. And I'm not all that men or women of God really are. I don't even consider myself a Christian, but I consider myself a man of God. Somebody who's had the privilege to be chosen by God. The fact that you're listening to this video right now means that God's calling you, and you've been chosen for something that's a lot cooler than what you're already doing. Okay, I don't care if you're like, like MacGyver, okay? Speaking of cool, for those of you that say being a Christian isn't cool, I believe that if some of the older generations might be aware with somebody who is known as a Mr. McQueen, Steve McQueen. I'm pretty sure I got that half of that name wrong, but I get the McQueen right. Because it's cool. Because he received God. Meaning, since this guy is, according to the world, the forefront and example of all things that are cool. Then by him choosing God, he's basically saying, hey, God is cool. So, either you come to, either I see you in heaven, either you be there, or you be square. I can feel the awkwardness of that pun. And I must say, it suits me oddly well, so expect many more. I'm in a good mood. I'm always in a good mood when I do these videos. I get to be me. I get to be me. This is one of the few times where I don't have to worry about people judging me. Because I'm speaking to such a large crowd that the opinions of one does not outweigh the opinion of God, which is a lot bigger than all of your opinions combined. Now, I do recognize that a lot of my videos are now ranging between 15 minutes to over an hour. And that's just because, unlike most people who run YouTube on their channels. I'm not concerned with a time limit. I am concerned with making a certain level of progress, and then I say, okay, that is enough. Plus, I don't like to end a video on a low note or with me failing, like with failure, because that also does not reflect well on God. Yeah, sorry. Ate some food earlier. It's digesting. You see, when you do things for God, you have to do it to a certain level or extent. Like when you say, hey, I'm going to make art for God. Okay, so the artwork itself has to be a certain level of perfection. Not perfect all the time, but done to the best of your abilities. So long as it's done to your best at that moment, then God will be happy. If your best right now is potatoes, then make potatoes. Or maybe a couple French fries, doesn't hurt. With a little chili on top and some cheese. I think I might make that after this video. Sorry, a little hungry too. But yeah, walking with God it's something that you're never going to regret. And I know this is like pretty much all my videos where I just talk about how it is to walk with God. Let me give you some examples. When I first got saved, I had a lot of emotional baggage that I never dealt with. And part of what happens when you first get saved is God's going to help you, because before he can really use you, he has to get rid of all of that emotional baggage that you have. So you're not inhibited, because that baggage really, it's like walking around with a whole bunch of luggage in your hand. You got one thing that weighs like 10 pounds, you got another thing that weighs like 15, you get another thing that weighs maybe somewhere along the lines of, I don't know, 170 pounds to 3 tons, normal stuff. And while you have that makes you feel like inadequate in your walk with God. Like when God tells you to do something, you're like, I can't do that. I'm still not ready, because if God says something, it's because you're ready. So as you walk with him, little by little, he gets rid of the baggage that you have. Like, he's like, don't worry, you don't need that. You don't need that depression. But you getting past it will be useful, so keep the memory, but let go of the feeling. That's the best way I could put it. But he walks you through it in a way that you can handle it. Now, some people like me are very stubborn, but can, pretty much challenge a whole bunch of things head on. But there's even things that I was a bit adherent to want to do. Like, for one, dealing with my claustrophobia. No, I didn't. No, I did not want to deal with that, and that sucked in all aspects. Even now, it's not as bad as it used to be. Whereas I don't have to try as hard to keep that fear down when in tight spaces. Because when I first got saved, I couldn't even step in an elevator. Unless you forced me to, I would not step in there, and I would not like it the entire time. Escalators, I didn't like. I was okay with stairs so long as I never looked down. But for the most part, I didn't even like going upstairs, because of my fear of heights. And my fear of crowds, I rarely ever wanted to go out because I didn't want to see a large crowd of people because of my PTSD in relation of the times I went to hell. And it was a very, I felt trapped. And little by little, using my family, using random people, God helped me through my claustrophobia, through my, what is that called? Let me just look that up real quick. All right. Let's see. I think it takes forever to load. That's why. All right, let's see. What was it? Fear of people. Anthrophobia. There we are. And yeah, you see, that's what I had. I had anthrophobia, acrophobia, and claustrophobia. I still have all of those, but it's not as bad. I can now, the highest I can go up and be able to look down and not super tense up would have to be maybe 300 to 700 feet in the air. Now you asked me to step off that bridge and I'm going to tell you no, and probably walk very far away from the edge of said bridge because reasons. But I believe that's normal because, it won't kill me, but it'll hurt. I don't like feeling pain. But what we're supposed to have is a healthy fear of God. But fearing God is more it's not like a normal fear. Because you're supposed to have a healthy fear of God. Which is what's supposed to direct all of your actions. But that doesn't mean that God is purposely making you fearful. But this is not a normal type of fear. But this is needed for your walk with God. So I'm going to describe it as best I can. The fear of God you're supposed to have is... It's supposed to be more like... This like a respect of God is the best way for me to put it. When the fear of God is supposed to be like the same kind of fear you have like for, let's say, the President of the United States. Oh wait, or the leader of North Korea, or Putin, or the leader of Russia, or any like high leader of a country kind of person. And that's the kind of fear we're talking about. It's not like you're terrified of them that you never want to go near them. No, it's more like you have such a high level of respect that you don't want to disrespect that person at all. Like you want to stay within like their good graces and respect them. because you understand the level of power they have, or at least to some degree, the level of power that they have. And that's how it should be when you're walking with God. You love God and you walk with Him. And you want to do things for God. But you're just like, whenever like you see that like it's going to make God mad that you like do this, you're like, nope, not doing that. I don't want to deal with that. Not wanting to deal with like what you're supposed to deal with, but like more of a not wanting to deal with the wrath of God. Where like you love His grace, but you fear His wrath, and you don't want other people to go through that wrath. So you want to keep them away from that wrath of God, because yes, God does get upset. But that doesn't, I mean, this is really hard to talk about. I don't understand. It's hard because of the sorry. But yeah. But that's all part of the walk with God. And like as you walk with God more, you will respect God more, just for two reasons. One, because you learn more and more of what God can do, all the cool stuff and all the scary stuff too. But because like you're just like in amazement like at all times when it comes to God. Like whatever, like you could see like a bird like land on a tree and you'd be like, wow, God made that bird. Also, the main use for all birds is actually pretty surprising. God showed me this, I think maybe and it was roughly either 10 months ago or maybe a year ago. I don't know, I'm not good with time, like at all. So roughly so birds, you know, like the animal that people say may be the most useless animal on the planet, are actually some of the most useful animals on the planet. What birds do is something quite impressive. God uses them as seed spreaders because they eat seeds that they eat like a fruit or like, you know, berries off of a tree. And then because birds have wings, they fly large distances, and then because they ate that berry, they also ate the seed of that tree, and then they poop it out, and then when they poop it out, it lands on some ground, and then some animal walks by, and then that animal probably steps on the seed, which it pushes it into the ground. Like pushes the seed into the ground, and then the seed like just kind of sits there, and then it rains, and then leaves fall on top of it, and they decay on top of the seed, and then the seed starts to grow because now it's not just like in the ground and somewhere that holds it, where it's not being burnt up by the sun, but it's being covered up by leaves and stuff that are decaying on top, which is providing coverage so it doesn't get scorched by the sun. And then with the rain, and then like water comes in, and like the ground is moist, and then it starts to grow, and then it becomes like a tree. You know how overly complicated all of that process is? That is an overly complicated highly tuned process that happens, and it happens over the course of it varies, but that's so cool. And God mentions like the birds, like, yeah, I'll provide for you, but do I not provide, make sure that the grass has clothing, or like that the birds are well fed? Are you kidding me? That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. Because God designed that, and it's so like, oh my gosh. That's just so cool. And it's just like, wow, all that happens, and then no human really sees that. But God showed me it so I could tell you guys, and now you know how trees are planted naturally. How cool is that? Now you have this weird knowledge that you kind of don't know what to do with. But it's just so cool. It's just so cool to see how God is able to do that and plan things out so perfectly. You know? Oh man, like the birds that people are like, oh, that's a pretty animal. That thing just doesn't do any. And you know how if you're a caretaker for birds, you're gonna understand this. If you're not, just go to a pet store and ask them if birds are messy eaters, because they are. They're like some of the messiest eaters on the planet. And I always thought that was so weird. Well, that's so while they're eating like the fruit or the berries that are on the tree, that they can't get everything in their mouth, so some of it slips out and goes to the ground around the tree, and then that is either taken up by a mouse or like a rabbit or whatever, and they just kind of eat the thing whole. Or like just another animal just kind of steps out, they get stuck in the bottom of their foot for a while, and then they walk with it for a while, and then it just kind of gets stuck somewhere else, and it's just like, whoa. That's cool. And keep in mind, sometimes God shows me these things while I'm driving, so I'm just like, I'm driving. Oh gosh, I'm gonna crash. Please take the wheel. You know? So, yeah. But it's just so cool just to see that. And God showed, like, that's how, like, getting understanding from God kind of works, at least for me. Where you're just sitting there calmly, not even thinking about the subject, and God's like, hey, now you know how to fly a tank. Wait. Why do I need to know how to? And also, here's how seeds are planted all over the world. What? And so, yeah, that's kind of how it works. It's just like, you serve God faithfully, and then God's like, hey, now you know how this works. And it's like, because like there's trees all over the planet, and some people were just like, well, how did all those trees get there? They don't get there by accident. And the funny thing is, like, when the ground is super scorched and like everything is burnt up, even the roots get burnt up in some cases, it's like God starts having more birds just kind of fly over the area looking for a place to land. But in the meantime, they are pooping all over the place, and their poops have seeds in there, and then those seeds are just kind of landing in ground that is now, like made kind of renew, because part of here's a farming technique, so you know. How do I know this? Okay, so it's a farming technique, but it's not really used all that often anymore. Well, it's a part of crop rotation that used to be done about 100 years or so. Looks like we need a ninja. Let me just Oh, there we go. No. Yep, there we go. So going back, it's so cool to see that, to see how God is able to do all these really cool things. And because it's just like, wow, that's a lot of attention to detail. That's a lot of attention to detail. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. But the thing is that I'm serving a God like that, and you could be serving a God like that. And to you that's already serving a God like that, you already know. But I'm talking to the people that aren't saved. That is so much attention to detail. That is just like... Oh yeah, back to the fire poop. So... So yeah, as birds fly over, they're looking for a place to land and nest, but they can't find it. But they still have to poop. That's why they do that, those flybys of poop. And as they're doing that, they're laying the seeds for a new level of like a new forest. And because the area has just been burned, what that actually does, and because there's a high level of nitrogen in the ground, believe it or not, that's actually a growth accelerant for plants. Which I didn't know until about 5 minutes ago. I didn't look it up. Got like, oh yeah, that's why there's so much and after a forest fire. And I'm just like, well then, if forest fires are used, we'll get to that in a different video. But the fact that it's just like whoa, because as they poop there, then like animals that are looking for food, they're scavenging around. And that just makes it all the more cool. To think about that, to think that they're scavenging around for food, and as they're doing, they're kind of roughing up the ground, which makes it easier for the seed to go in to the ground. Or if they're like a bigger animal, they're just kind of walking around and they step on the seeds and then that pushes it into the ground. And because the ground is highly like fertile because it's on fire. And the farming technique is this: you burn after you're done. If you start seeing an area of crops that aren't yielding as much as it used to, then you cut everything, leave it there, and then set it on fire. You put like a perimeter around it, like you're just digging it into the ground, and have that perimeter filled with water or something like that, or like stones, so the fire doesn't really spread. That's why you cut it and then you leave it there, and then you burn it, and then as that thing is burning, it's making the ground more fertile, so the next time you plant there, and then you leave it alone for like a couple of months. Don't immediately plant because it needs to like sit there, kind of like when you put food in the fridge and then for some reason the next day it tastes a lot better than it did the first day. Yeah, that's why that you do that. So now you know an old technique that hasn't been used for hundreds of years. To my knowledge, it hasn't been used. Even so, really cool. But yeah, but just like how God is very attention to detail with all of that you never see, He's also the same way with you. He pays attention to when you're not feeling good. But He also knows what you will need. So thank you for watching this whole video. Thank you for listening. Glory be to God. This is truly an honor that I get to do this. So thank you. Thank you for listening. And blessings be upon you. Words cannot describe the gratitude that I have. So thank you. This is the Silver Watchman, signing out.